Welcome to the biggest family reunion in history. But before we meet the relatives, we need to debunk the biggest lie you have ever been told. You have probably seen that famous picture, right? The one where a hunched-over monkey slowly stands up and magically turns into a modern human holding a briefcase.
Wrong.
Spoiler alert,
That's not how
that
we
picture
do
is a
things here.
complete lie.
We mark this as a
You did not
definite
evolve
no.
from a chimpanzee. If we evolved from chimps, why are chimps still around today?
This
Let us get
incredible
one
fossil
thing
is
straight.
Tyrannosaurus rex.
Chimpanzees
As you
are
can
not
see
our
by the
grandparents.
size, it was a fearsome
They are
predator
more
back
like
in the
our
Cretaceous
evolutionary
period.
cousins, living their own lives on a totally different branch. To find our true origins, we have to travel all the way back down the family tree, to the exact moment our branches split apart. We are looking for the last common ancestor. A mysterious creature that gave rise to both us and the modern apes. It is a crazy story. So, buckle up your time machine. We are traveling back 7 million years, long before smartphones, pyramids, or even the concept of wearing pants existed. Welcome to the ancient African continent. Back then, it was mostly covered in dense, incredibly lush jungles. It was the perfect playground for tree-swinging primates. And right here, hanging out in the branches, is your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. He is a very bizarre, hairy little dude, honestly. He doesn't look like much of a world conqueror, does he? He is essentially a wild, fruit-eating survivor, just trying to avoid becoming someone's lunch. Scientists call some of these early candidates Sahelanthropus. They had small, chimp-sized brains and spent a lot of their time safely high up in the canopy. You might be wondering, what makes this hairy guy any different from the other apes swinging around? Well, he had one secret weapon evolving. Fossil evidence suggests that he was starting to do the unthinkable. He was beginning to walk upright on two legs, at least some of the time. Walking on two legs might seem normal to you, but back then, it was an absolute game-changer for survival. It freed up his tiny hands. Life in the trees was pretty comfortable. But Mother Nature was about to throw the ultimate curveball, changing the climate and forcing our ancestor down. Around 5 to 7 million years ago, the Earth decided to go through a massive cooling phase. The lush, comfortable jungles slowly began to shrink. The endless canopy of trees started to disappear, replaced by wide, open grasslands. Food became scarce, and staying in the trees was no longer an option. Imagine being our ancestor right now. You are used to a safe, leafy penthouse, and suddenly you are evicted. The ground level looked absolutely terrifying. With a deep breath and probably a lot of panic, he climbed down. This single moment of touching the dirt changed the course of history forever. Welcome to the harsh, unforgiving African savanna. It was bright, hot, and completely exposed. There were no trees left to easily hide from massive, hungry predators. On four legs, moving through the tall grass was incredibly difficult and slow. You could not see what was hiding just a few feet away from you. Scientists call this transition the savanna hypothesis. To survive this harsh new landscape, our ancestors had to fully commit to walking upright on two legs permanently. Walking on two legs is surprisingly efficient. It actually saves a ton of energy compared to knuckle walking, which is crucial when you have to travel miles for food. But the biggest advantage was visibility. By standing up straight, our little hairy grandfather could suddenly see over the tall savanna grass like a built-in periscope. This allowed him to spot dangerous predators from a safe distance. And trust me, in prehistoric Africa, everything larger than a toaster wanted to eat him. He did not have sharp claws. He did not have giant fangs. If a massive prehistoric cat spotted him, his only real defense strategy was running away very fast. It was a brutal game of hide and seek. But walking upright offered another brilliant, accidental perk that would eventually make us the ultimate apex predators. Because his hands were no longer needed for walking, they were completely free to carry things. He could carry food back to his family or hold objects. A simple rock or a heavy wooden stick suddenly became a tool. And with a tool in hand, this weak, hairy primate was no longer completely helpless. They were small, slow, and soft. But by getting kicked out of the trees, they took the first steps toward building the human empire. But before you think this is a perfect superhero origin story, let me stop you right there. Evolution is actually incredibly messy and full of hilarious compromises. Let us start with the most famous human complaint, back pain. Our ancestors' spines were originally built like a horizontal bridge for walking on four legs. When we suddenly stood upright, that bridge had to become a vertical pillar. The spine had to bend into an S shape just to balance our heavy heads. So, the very first time our ancestor walked across the savannah, he probably also experienced the very first case of lower back pain in primate history. But wait, there is more. The second major biological trade-off was the battle between our growing brains and our shrinking stomachs. It is a crazy metabolic compromise. As our ancestors faced more complex challenges, their brains started to grow larger. A bigger brain means you can invent better tools and outsmart deadly predators. Here is the catch. The brain is an absolute energy hog. To fuel that massive thinking machine, the body had to steal energy from another large organ. The digestive system drew the short straw. To compensate for a bigger brain, our ancestors had to trade away their long, complex, plant-digesting intestinal tracts. This meant they could no longer just sit around chewing tough leaves all day. They desperately needed high-quality, calorie-dense foods to keep their big brains running. And finally, the third bizarre trade-off, losing our thick, glorious fur. Have you ever wondered why we are the only naked apes on the planet? Running around the blazing hot African savanna on two legs generates a massive amount of body heat. A thick fur coat would literally cook them alive. So, evolution stripped away our fur and gave us millions of sweat glands instead. We became the ultimate sweaty marathon runners, capable of endless cooling. But of course, Mother Nature has a wicked sense of humor. Losing your fur is great at noon, but it is an absolute nightmare at midnight. To keep from freezing in the dark, our ancestors eventually had to hunt other animals just to steal their fur coats. Talk about a massive biological irony. So, walking on two legs gave us freedom, backaches, big brains, small stomachs, and a desperate need for clothes. And the journey was just getting started. So, our ancestors were hairless, sweaty, and constantly complaining about their lower backs. How did these bizarre creatures actually survive the prehistoric food chain? They desperately needed high-energy food to feed those rapidly expanding brains. And out on the savannah, the absolute best source of calories was meat. But there was a huge problem. Early humans did not have sharp teeth, venom, or claws. Hunting massive Ice Age beasts was basically a death wish. If our little hairy grandfather tried to tackle a giant prehistoric beast head-on, he would instantly be deleted from the evolutionary server. It was utterly impossible. Instead of fighting, they used their new superpower, intelligence. They became the ultimate opportunistic scavengers, waiting for the big scary predators to finish their lunch. They would hide in the tall grass, completely out of sight, and patiently watch as giant saber-toothed cats enjoyed their massive, freshly caught prehistoric meals. Once the giant cats took a nap, our ancestors sprinted in. But the big predators usually left nothing behind except thick, hard, impossible-to-chew bones. This is where those free hands and stone tools saved the day. While other animals left the bones behind, our ancestors knew a highly delicious secret. They used heavy stones to smash the bones wide open. Inside was bone marrow, an incredibly rich, calorie-dense superfood that no other animal could easily reach. This secret bone marrow buffet acted like premium rocket fuel for the human brain. The more nutrient-dense food they ate, the smarter they rapidly became. And with bigger brains came another massive evolutionary leap: complex communication. They realized that surviving alone was hard, but surviving as a team was invincible. By working together and throwing rocks in a coordinated attack, a group of weak primates could actually scare away predators much larger than themselves. This teamwork changed everything. We went from being the terrified prey hiding in the trees, to becoming a highly organized, stone-throwing gang of savanna survivors. But their greatest trick was still to come. Somehow, these clever apes managed to capture and control the most terrifying force in nature, pure fire. Cooking food meant it was pre-digested and completely safe to eat. It unlocked even more energy, forever securing our spot at the top of the food chain. So, let us recap. We were kicked out of the trees, forced to walk on two fragile legs, and dealt with chronic back pain just to survive. We lost our protective fur, making us vulnerable to the cold, but allowing us to run for hours without overheating under the blazing hot sun. We sacrificed our massive digestive systems, forcing us to invent tools, hunt for fresh meat, and eventually discover how to cook with blazing fire. All of these bizarre biological trade-offs were made for one singular purpose: to feed our increasingly massive, energy-hungry, overly complicated thinking brains. And that brings us back to the museum. Remember that famous monkey-to-man picture we talked about at the very beginning of the video? It completely misses the point. Evolution is not a straight line of upgrades. It is a messy, chaotic branching tree of desperate survival strategies. We did not evolve from modern chimpanzees. We simply share a very weird, very distant grandfather who lived in the jungle 7 million years ago. They stayed in the safety of the dense forests, while our ancestors were forced out into the terrifying, open savanna to face the unknown. We were the ultimate underdogs of the prehistoric world. But through sheer stubbornness, teamwork, and a little bit of luck, we conquered the planet. The next time you experience lower back pain or start sweating on a hot day, just remember, you are carrying the absolute legacy of a survivor. If you enjoyed this wild journey back in time, do not let your brain shrink. Hit that giant red subscribe button right now. And smash that like button harder than our ancestors smashed those prehistoric bones to get to the delicious, calorie-dense marrow hidden inside. Leave a comment below telling us which evolutionary trade-off you think is the absolute craziest. I personally vote for the back pain. It is completely unfair. Next time, we will explore the freezing ice age and meet the massive, terrifying beasts that forced us to adapt all over again. Thank you so much for watching our documentary. Stay curious, keep exploring history, and I will see you in the next incredible evolutionary adventure.